What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MMA meeting. Let's Talk with the Weasel podcast, where we talk all things MMA. There's quite a bit to talk about here, but first we gotta talk about Manscaped.com, the global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. They got a deal for all of us. The Platinum Package 4.0, which is something I had to get, which includes all the hygienics that you need, such as the best body trimmer in the business, the Lawnmower 4.0, which greatly reduces the nicks and cuts. For the amount of times I've used this, I have never gotten cut at all, because it has the advanced skin-safe technology, and it can also be used in the shower because it is a waterproof trimmer, and it also has these LED lights that make it so much easier to know what you are exactly cutting. Absolutely top of the class, state-of-the-art body trimmer, man. Also included in the Platinum Package 4.0 are the Crop Preserver, which is a ball deodorant, and a Crop Reviver, which is a toner. These are best to use after the shower, in my opinion, which I always make sure to do, to quickly go on your day with a cooling, refreshing feeling. Manscaped also has you covered with the Weed Whacker, which is a nose and hair trimmer, used with the same technology as the Lawnmower 4.0, so you can definitely expect the best experience possible. They also include a body wash, as well as a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner with a stick deodorant. This package literally has everything you need. For a limited time though, you get all of this plus 2 free gifts, a Shed travel bag and a Manscaped anti-chafing boxer briefs. All you're gonna have to do is go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free international shipping with these 2 free gifts when you use the promo code WEASEL20. That's WEASLE20. Just make sure to go to manscaped.com, where you can get all the best tools for the job. Some fights got announced. Some new information came out from some legends like Aldo, talking about what mentally hurt him more than anything ever in his entire career. Now that he is retired, he's going to be very honest about shortcomings, the things that messed him over, his successes, and everything personal to him. It was very interesting and also understandable that the thing that hurt him mentally the most was not getting a rematch against Conor McGregor. I know what everybody's probably going to think. Of course, he didn't get another payday. But it wasn't just that. I mean, if you remember back in the day when you watched Aldo live during his entire reign, I mean, he's top 5 greatest champions in UFC history. The only guys that you can argue above him are, GSP, John Jones, Anderson Silva, and Demetrius Johnson. Nobody else. To see him getting knocked out, lose for the first time in the UFC after an historic run at the featherweight division that nobody even to this day could even come close to. I mean, Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway are struggling to even get halfway there. For him never to get that rematch, where a lot of the other champions have got rematches for themselves. I mean, people are still kind of bummed out that Zhang Weili got a rematch against Rose, despite only being the champion for 1 title defense. And Aldo, who was on a 9 title defense, didn't even get a rematch against Conor McGregor, which also would have been a big monetary gain for the UFC regardless. And also, it could be seen as maybe less threatening for Conor's career moving forward. The UFC can capitalize on more opportunities by even having him rematch Aldo instead of going up a division and doing everything else that Conor did. Maybe it would have been a little bit more of a build-up, but who really knows? And there's other champions, of course, that got rematches over less than what Aldo did. The only thing that goes against Aldo's rematch claim is the fact that he got knocked out in 13 seconds in probably the most historic knockout loss in UFC history. Or should I say knockout win, because after that fight, it seemed like everybody forgot who Aldo even was. So the win is actually more memorable than the loss. One side is seen, the other side really isn't. People have forgotten Aldo ever since that, and continuously was saying that he was over the hill, he was done after every single loss, but when he comes back, he's back to his prime form and everything. There was never more confusion on a legend's career like Aldo's. And to see him talk about, him actually being demotivated, I don't even know if that's a real word, demotivated after getting turned down on his rematch against Conor McGregor, it is a bit heartbreaking to actually hear that. And we can't be mistaken, if you go and watch that full interview, Aldo gives Conor all the credit. He has no gripes against Conor. He in fact says that Conor's a good person. He says that Conor was very funny in the build-up of their fight. He said he would call in drunk on their private jet and start talking a whole bunch of trash, and Aldo said it was pretty funny. It was an experience. It was a fun time, and it's something that most fighters would never be a part of. He gives Conor all the credit for the knockout, the punch. He said that Conor's reach was a problem for him. He said that reach advantage on him caused Aldo to overextend. He had to find a way to get inside. He did say that he believes he spooked Conor a little bit, which I don't think is correct at all. And he said he tried to Mike Tyson his way inside. But if you realize that same combo he threw at Conor, he also threw it at Kenny Florian multiple times in their fight, who has the same dimensions as Conor. He's the same height with the same reach. And he's also a bladed stance fighter, long sideways stance, who's much more traditional when it comes to his striking. Aldo developed that combination against Kenny Florian years before he fought Conor, but ultimately went back to it because of the same dimensions that he thought he could be successful against. And ultimately it paid. He fought a better striker than anybody's fought before. Whereas Kenny Florian, the reaction he made against Aldo's attack was just to move away. He used his footwork, he used his speed, and get away from that long stretch out combo. He didn't have the counter quality to him. He didn't have that kind of skill like Conor did. Conor at his deadliest is as a counter striker, and especially against someone who's shorter than him and an orthodox fighter, which I talked about recently. If you're orthodox, you're shorter, and you're someone who will be aggressive against him, against most of those kind of fighters, Conor will have a field day with them. But a lot of the credit also has to come down to the mental games. What Conor did to Aldo's head. The amount of trash talk, the amount of stuff that Aldo went through, completely threw off what his game plan should have been. Leg kicks. Forget the boxing. Aldo's not going to be able to outbox Conor McGregor from a distance like that. He needs to kick out the legs and then use his boxing behind it. Or even try to attempt takedowns here and there. Just to mix up the game, become an MMA fighter. Instead of just relying on his speed, relying on his hands against a masterful distance manager. That was one of the big changes in the sport where a lot of people start to replicate what Conor McGregor was doing in fights. The bladed stance, the emphasis on the power hand to counter and also use as an offensive, aggressive tool. How many fighters did we start to see that they start relying on their power hand to do everything for them and just use their footwork and distance management in a way to gauge all of that? And Conor brought in a lot of feints, a lot of masking factors to his own left hand. His kicks alone were used to get an opponent to move out in a certain direction, and even would lean in to create an illusion that he's closer than he actually is while reaching forward with his right hand, probing and also trapping your lead, mostly against orthodox fighters. They didn't do this as much against southpaw because it wasn't as necessary, just to trap that lead hand to force out their power hand, and because of that, using his footwork, using his masterful distance management skills, able to counter them effectively. He did this exact same thing against Jose Aldo. So that was a very interesting interview to actually listen to. Aldo being very honest, and that's something I like to see from these legends. If he's being honest like that, it means he's probably never going to come back, because that's when you really know they're retired. If they're telling you the truth of their career, the truth of their opponents, and how they felt in every fight. But in other news, we do have a big fight that got announced. It is a bit bittersweet. As a fan, I love it, but way too soon in their careers, I think. Arman Tsarukyan versus Damir Ismagulov is happening, and I believe the date is December 17. Yeah, December 17 for UFC Vegas 66. As a fan, I love this fight a lot, man. It's a highly technical fight against two guys who are, in the future, going to be some of the top fighters in the lightweight division. Ismagulov is a bit older, 31 years old, whereas Arman is like 26, I think. So there is a bit of a limit of where Ismagulov is going to go. He needs to get going quick. I don't know if Arman Tsarukyan is the right opponent for him to rise the rankings as fast as possible, but it is also interesting why the matchmakers put this one together. I mean, can Arman catch a break? He fought Islam Makhachev, he fought Guram Kutaladze, he fought Yoel Alvarez, and he fought Mateusz Gamrot. Now he's fighting Ismagulov. Can the guy get like another opponent here? Because the thing is with the lightweight division right now, there's a lot of those older guys in the top that sooner rather than later, they're going to get weeded out. The Dustins, the Justins, the Chandlers. I don't know how old Dariush is. I think Dariush is around that same age. Those guys are going to get weeded out very quickly by the Fizieves, by the Armans, by the Gurums, by the Gamrots. But why put these young guys against each other right now? Why stunt their growth? Because we know the formula of the UFC, it's a very intelligent one. Build off the younger fighters' names off the older fighters when they're on the decline. The issue is probably those guys at the top right now are not on the decline. The only one that would be Justin Gaethje, but I don't even think he's at that point right now. So maybe they're using this opportunity for these younger guys to fight each other, build up on that, and then get up there and start fighting the older fighters. They did it with RDA when he fought Fiziev, because RDA is much older than the other fighters in that division right now. But for sure, the fight has to be Fiziev versus Gaethje. That has to be the fight that's next. I would have loved to seen Arman fight someone else and Damir fight somebody else, but this fight is going to be pretty good regardless. It's an issue for both of them, especially for a 3-round fight. It's going to favor a little bit more on Arman's side, I think, whereas Damir is a lot measured on how much energy he uses. Arman uses a lot of energy in fights when it comes to his takedowns, to his kicks. He throws a lot of big stuff out there, whereas Damir is extremely efficient. There will be low effort with maximum effect. This comes behind his jab. This comes behind his takedowns, his counter left hook, his 1-2 combination. Everything Damir does is extremely textbook and is quite different than what Arman does. Arman's more of a kicker than he is a puncher. And with the kicks, he's throwing question marks out there. He's throwing side kicks sometimes, big round kicks to your head, big leg kicks here and there. And his punches are generally just like overhands and left hooks, just trying to knock you out. And his takedowns are high energy as well. If he doesn't get any of that down, if he starts to fail on a lot of his attempts early in the fight, it's going to be pretty bad for him later, because Damir is just going to keep a jab on his face the whole time. And that jab, if it doesn't start working early, it's going to eventually start working late. And it's ultimately just going to set up a lot of his other offense. He's a precise fighter with simplistic techniques, and that is someone that can get very far in the game. And it's interesting because Damir does fight like a guy who is wiser, who is older, Whereas Arman does fight like a guy who is younger, who's full of like fury, just wants the big moment. And this fight is definitely going to test his maturity. He has to learn from that Mitush Gamrot fight, 100%. And the Gamrot fight was a good experience for him. 5 rounds, but there is something that a lot of people don't know. Damir has gone 5 rounds twice in his career. Once against Maxim Divnish in M1, and another time back in 2016 where I cannot pronounce that man's name, Ilyas Chingabek. Yeah, he's actually won 5 rounds more times than Arman Tsarukyan, and that spells trouble. So yeah, this is a tough one. I am starting to like Damir's chances against Arman, especially right now considering where Arman is at in his career and where Damir is. In terms of age and everything like that, Damir has a lot of fights, a lot of experience. He's 24-1. He just beat Guram. He also fought Yoel Alvarez and beat Thiago Moises. He's not necessarily a finisher, so I don't know if Arman's going to be in that level of danger, but he's so safe with his offense and defense. It's going to be hard for Arman to really hurt him. Arman is going to have to take this fight like a strategic one. Don't try to look for the knockout at all. Don't look for the finish. Don't look for the submission. Everything is going to be tough. That's how Arman's going to have to look at this one. Everything's going to be frustrating. Getting by that jab is going to be frustrating. Getting by that reach, trying to get the takedown and set it up. Nothing is going to be easy. Everything is going to be extremely tedious for him, and he's going to have to accept that for this fight. Another fight that got matched up, and this one is not that fun, unless you hate Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes is fighting Shane Burgos in PFL. Yeah, he came back from retirement, and he's fighting a monster who isn't just a featherweight. Shane Burgos can easily fight in the lightweight division, and I think he would be a good size guy there. I don't think he would be oversized by most lightweights. And fun fact about Marlon Moraes, he did fight at featherweight before in the beginning of his career, and he went 6-4-1. 6 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, and there's a reason why he never went back to featherweight ever since. And he's going to beat Shane Burgos coming out of retirement with no chin. The size difference is going to be absolutely absurd. I don't even know how they were able to sanction this one. Now we go to fights that aren't happening. When it comes to boxing, I mostly just like to watch Tyson Fury, but apparently now he's not fighting Anthony Joshua. So there was news that he was going to fight Anthony Joshua and Usyk was going to fight Wilder. Yeah, that's boxing for you. That sport's in shambles, man. Well, now it turns out, according to Fury, that Joshua isn't taking the fight because Joshua didn't sign the contract or whatever is going on. Boxing politics thing, man. This is why MMA is just better, or at least the UFC is. You get the fights, man. You get most of the fights you ask for. When it comes to boxing, it's the opposite. It's wishful thinking to get the fights that you ask for. And why is it always Joshua? Why is it always him that never fights Wilder, that never fights Fury? I mean, these guys have been calling him out for so long, but he goes on to fight other guys. And he lost to Usyk twice for it. It should be Fury versus Usyk to determine who actually is the best heavyweight boxer on the planet. And then it should be Joshua versus Wilder. It's a no-brainer. And if Fury beats Usyk, call it a career. You're the best heavyweight boxer of all time. I'm not going to say greatest. Some will argue that. Definitely the best. No boxer in history, I think, would have beaten Fury. And talking about prospects, man, I will have to go on and say, this is a special time to watch talent like Bo Nickal and Muhammad Mokaev. These two are some of the most impressive prospects I've seen in many years of the UFC. And they're both young, especially Mokaev. Mokaev is 22 years old, and he's so well-rounded. He didn't look exceptional in his last fight, but the guy's young, he's growing, he's still learning. He isn't even near his prime. He's like 7 years premature of his prime. Even if he loses along the way, it's only growth from here. I'm not expecting Mokaev to run through the division right now. I'm expecting to see some special skills out of this guy, whether it's now or whether it's later. And Bo Nickal's a different kind of story, because I believe Bo Nickal will have more success at least early in his career compared to Mokaev, considering what divisions they're fighting at. Mokaev is in a much more well-rounded division, much more skilled division at flyweight, whereas Bo Nickal in the middleweight division, it's pretty shallow there. The lower end of the top 15 are fighters that he could possibly even beat right now. But when you get to the top, like the Robert Whittakers, like the Marvin Vittoris, like the Israel Adesanyas, potentially even, Alex Pereiras, things get pretty dicey for him at the moment. But given his style, he's potentially the best wrestler in the whole middleweight division, not counting Khamzat at the moment. Or you can count Khamzat if that's what you want to argue. As he is, he may be the best wrestler in the middleweight division, at least offensively. Because when we factor in the best wrestlers, it's not always offense. We have to also factor defense. And Robert Whittaker takes that above everybody else. So you can even argue that Robert Whittaker could be a better wrestler in MMA compared to Bo Nickal, solely due to his defense and the fact that he could take down other fighters in the weight class as well. Just like I said about Khamzat Chimaev, with Bo Nickal, keep that man away from Robert Whittaker. Everybody else he could kind of contest with. I know he wants to rise quick. I know he wants to fight Khamzat. He wants the big moments. He's a young guy, but there's a lot of growth for him. I mean, he's fighting so soon. I think he's fighting Jamie Pickett on December 10th for UFC 282. The guy's rolling, man, and I'm super excited about that. I love seeing these young fighters take fights so quickly to get their name out there. That is an element. I was actually talking to a friend about this. That is an element in the game that is missing. Fighters fighting often, the eagerness to get back in there. That is what made those boxers back in the 70s and 80s so special, like the Tysons and the Durans and the Chavezes and all of those guys. They fought so often and they were always fresh on your mind for the whole year. Imagine if a fighter could fight 10 times a year in the UFC. Just with that alone, if they can win every single one of those 10 fights, forget about the competition. They can all be the same level. Taxi drivers, it doesn't matter. People love that stuff. People love to see someone go out there and just demolish man after man. That's what made Tyson so special in the beginning. Tyson didn't really have like a great level of competition early on in his career. He was fighting some crazy number of times a year, like a dozen times or whatever it was. And people didn't care that he was fighting much lesser competition. They just wanted to see the performance. And it looked like Khamzat was going to be that when he took 2 fights in a week. That kickstarted Khamzat's career. The fact that he was willing to take 2 fights in a week, just that alone, forget about the competition level. Just to see someone do that is so entertaining. And then they want to put him up against Damian Maia and Gerald Mearshart, I think it was, back to back. This is what we want to see. And I hope Bo Nickal would do something like that, or at least somebody. Somebody should bring that element back into fighting. That will draw in so much attention, regardless of who. If you could just perform. If you could perform well and finish your opponent to look dominant, maybe talk a little bit of trash or show some of your personality at least, you will explode immediately. That is a big key element that a lot of the fighters today do not have. And I don't know what goes into that. I don't know if fighters can just demand to fight like that. Because I know Dana says that he loves to see fighters asked to fight so quickly. Remember when Ronda Rousey defended her belt? I think it was Miesha Tate. And then they announced her fight with Sarah McMahon at the press conference. She fought her like 2.5 months later. That's exactly what we want to see. I miss that part of the sport. I miss when fighters were so eager to get back in there. Like, in fact, that's why so many people love Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland was fighting like 5 times a year. And we want to see more than that. We want to see a guy fight on as many cards as possible. If he can go 12 fights a year, it would be so appealing for the fans. But the only thing that can kind of go against that are the injuries. Unless you're like wiping out your opponents without taking any injuries and you are training smart, then do it. Why not? It's such a good formula for success. And here's something interesting that came out of Song Yadong's fight with Corey Sandhagen. Well, apparently he got a broken orbital bone. It might have been from the elbow from Corey, and he said he was seeing 3 of him since the 2nd round. So for the 3rd and 4th rounds, he was fighting 3 Corey Sandhagens. And it's crazy under those circumstances, he was fighting evenly with him. Cut over his eye, barely able to see from one eye, going up against one of the most formidable bantamweights we've ever seen, and fighting evenly with him. And Song Yadong is like, what, 24 years old? It's gonna be about time this guy becomes a champion. He was so impressive in that fight. I can't wait to see what he does further. That is so insane. The things he was fighting through against Corey Sandhagen, and still the cards were even going into the 5th. I think Corey would have won the fight in the 5th, but that's some kind of moral victory for Song Yadong. And then let's go right to the questions. We're going to start with the first by John Jordan. What would you consider Tony's best win, and when was he at his peak form? From this point, looking back, where does he rank at 155 all time? Thanks, brother. For sure, Tony's best win and the best he's ever looked was when he fought RDA in Mexico City. RDA was the best fighter he's ever beaten before and put on one of the best displays of a cardio performance I've ever seen before. Mexico City is at a very high altitude. Tony didn't look tired for 5 rounds. He put on a tremendous pace on RDA. It looked like he could have went even more, even harder for those 5 rounds. Technically, he looked better than ever before as well. Even with his unorthodox techniques he was tagging RDA with. I mean, he even threw up some sand in the fight. It was prime form Tony Ferguson. Everybody also remembers the combination where he was throwing that straight into a spinning elbow combo. He tried it twice in a row. The first one missed, second one landed on RDA. And this is RDA right after becoming the champion. Now, when you ask rank him at 155 of all time, are you talking about skills or are you talking about resume? Resume, you absolutely have to put him at least in the top 5. In my opinion, I would put him in the top 3 when you consider his winning streak, when you consider the guys that he beat, his performances in all of those fights. The only thing that goes against him in his performances were that he got hurt often. But with the way that he fought, how could you not? And look at the damage that he inflicted on his opponent. That has to come for something as well. And for the longest time, he was considered top 2 lightweights in the world for so many years. The only thing about the whole title thing was that he got screwed over so many times. The man should have been the undisputed champion, but he was extremely unlucky and also made bad decisions. Next question by Yusuf Cisse. Hey Weasel, what if Tony had stayed in the welterweight division his entire UFC career? Would he have been able to beat the previous champions like Johnny Hendricks, Robbie Lawler, or Tyron Woodley? Personally, I don't think he would beat either Usman or Leon, even if he was at his prime. Also, who would have been his toughest challenge in his prime? And I've always been curious about how he would do with his weight cuts being much easier. What are your thoughts? I don't think Tony would have been as successful at welterweight, to be honest, considering that these guys are bigger than he is, even though he is a bigger lightweight. But him being a bigger lightweight is probably going to make him a smaller to mid-sized welterweight. The thing that was going for him was the fact that he had more knockout power up there. He was able to hurt opponents a lot easier than he did at 155. This is very comparable to like Michael Johnson. When he went down to 145, his power was gone. At 155, he was able to knock out almost anybody he would fight. The change in power was definitely something for Tony Ferguson as well. Maybe not on that drastic of a scale, but I think he would have been able to hurt opponents with one shot a lot easier at welterweight. The other thing is, he would have been taken down much easier. Look at the guys that took him down at 155. Now, he was more depleted, he was more drained, so maybe he was physically weaker to defend the takedowns. But at the same time, he is fighting guys who are stronger than those 155ers and better wrestlers, like Colby Covington, like Khamzat Chimaev, like Kamaru Usman, even back in the day with Johnny Hendricks and Tyron Woodley and potentially even GSP. Those guys, I believe, would have taken him down regardless of how much stronger he would have been at 170. At the same time, though, there's a bit of a difference here. The wrestlers at 170 generally don't have a great concept of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu compared to the wrestlers at 155. For an example, he fought Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's a good wrestler, especially when he transitioned to MMA. And he's also a great submission artist. He has great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You look at guys like Michael Chandler, same kind of thing. Great wrestler, good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Charles Oliveira, decent wrestler, amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, top tier. Even Danny Castillo wasn't bad at BJJ. Looking that he trained with Uriah Faber and those guys. Those guys are all about chokes. At 170, you have guys like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley even, Johnny Hendricks. None of these guys had good BJJ. In fact, it's almost non-existent in some of them. Woodley has good submission defense. He has good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense. But the other guys generally don't have anything when it comes to that. Most of them were purely wrestlers. So there wasn't also an opportunity for Tony, when he would get taken down because of what happened, for him to get a submission in there. Triangle chokes, guillotines, arm bars. So what I would say is, it would be much harder for Tony to be dominant at welterweight, like win the majority of a fight against those bigger guys, but there was more of a likely chance that he could finish them than he would at 155. He was more dominant at 155, but he would be more threatening and dangerous at 170, considering the matchups and his added power and physical strength. Now, would he beat Johnny Hendricks, Lawler, or Woodley? I can see him being a problem for Johnny Hendricks, looking at his reach advantage, looking how unorthodox he was, and be able to pick Hendricks out from a distance, and also go for a bunch of these submissions if he gets taken to the ground. I can see how he could win that, but it would be a very difficult fight. It's hard for me to say if he would win or lose. I think the odds would favor Hendricks a little bit, so I might have to lean to Hendricks' side, but I could definitely see how Tony wins. I think Lawler beats Tony. It's almost like a Justin Gaethje on steroids kind of thing. A guy who's more powerful, bigger, in his prime, probably even had better fundamental boxing skill, had pretty solid footwork as well to get the angles to land his left hand. They are opposite stances, and if you remember, it was really Justin Gaethje's left hand that was doing a bunch of the damage on Tony. Imagine what Lawler would be able to do with the added power. I think Tyron Woodley would have also beaten Tony. I think Tyron's timing on his right hand would catch Tony off guard. If Tony played it smart though, he has the attributes and the skills to actually beat Tyron Woodley, keep him at the end of the jab on the fence, constantly kicking him to the body with those teeps. But as soon as he gets into the wild stuff, the spinning elbows and the bolo uppercuts and all that stuff, that's when Tyron can actually catch him and knock him out. And also Tyron always has a takedown. I don't think Tony will be able to defend it. But actually, with his pace, could Tyron keep up with him? Would Tyron gas out trying to keep up with Tony Ferguson? Because if Tony's throwing out all this stuff, and let's say he does get hurt early, but he doesn't get knocked out, he gets back up, Tyron's going to be in a kind of pace that he just never had to deal with other than when he fought like Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. And we saw how those fights went down. Purely just striking, though, Tony is going to put a different kind of pace on Tyron Woodley and also hurt him potentially even more. So I can see actually where Tony can beat him as well, but I would favor Tyron Woodley at the end of the day. And I agree with you, he does not beat Usman or Leon. And who would be his toughest challenge in his prime? Do you mean currently at welterweight or of all time? Of all time, it would be GSP. There's not much I think he could do to GSP. But if you're asking right now, I would say probably Usman. Then we go to Creamy Zeus. Hey Weasel, love your content, but I want to know why Volkanovski is so good and what he's doing that Izzy can't, because all of his fights are amazing. It's not that he's doing something that Izzy can't do, it's that he decides not to do it. Both these guys are highly technical, super high fight IQ, some of the most technical fighters in the UFC right now. In fact, pound for pound, they're number 1 and number 2. But the difference is Volkanovski brings the fight forward. He brings it to his opponent. That's just as simple as it is. Izzy is content with doing enough to win a fight without actually being in danger. And who can fault him for that? This is the game of hit and not getting hit. And right now, nobody's doing that better than Israel Adesanya. But Volkanovski doesn't play that same sort of game, even though that's his intent. He intends not to get hit and he intends to hit his opponent. It's amplified. He's not only trying to hit you, he's trying to hurt you with everything. He's trying to punish you with his takedowns. He's trying to crush you with his ground and pound, stun you with his overhands, break your legs with his kicks. Everything Volkanovski does while being the most technical fighter in the world is to hurt his opponent forcefully. Adesanya will pick at you enough to win on the scorecards, but the time that he wants to hurt you is when he feels like he himself is in danger. If the opponent brings the fight to him, that's when Izzy intends to hurt them with the most sniper-like shot that he can find on you. That is ultimately why people love Volkanovski, and a lot of people seem to kind of stray away from Izzy. Then we go to Cool Cat. Hey brother, what is your honest opinion in respect of Diaz versus Ferguson? I thought it was mediocre at least, both guys throwing sloppy punches, being slow, and even at some point Diaz literally walking circles, refusing to engage while Tony watching him frozen like Elsa. I see what you did there. And later absolutely everybody praising them. Praising for what? The worst performances ever from both of these guys? Also, has Paulo Costa turned a 180 from the most laughed at fighter into one of the funniest trolls in the MMA game? Thanks for everything you do. Keep it up. #Weasel Nation. Thank you so much for the question, man. Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit, but Diaz versus Ferguson by itself, just looking at it as it is, not a good fight. It just wasn't. The nostalgia factor, two fan favorites, two legends of the fight game who have gone against some of the most dangerous fighters in the world consistently for years. It's hard to talk down on these two, regardless of what kind of performances they put on, because they've paid their dues. Tony is, and Nate was, the OGs of the game. Really think about it. How many guys of their generation are still around? Not many. And it's a fight that a lot of people have been pondering for such a long time. They just like to see that these two figures, these two entities are in the cage together fighting. That's ultimately what made people happy about it. And the fact that it was Nate Diaz's last fight, they want to see him have that happy ending, which he ultimately had. Again, like I said before, Nate Diaz is the main character of the UFC. He just turned out to have his way with all of it. And Tony Ferguson is, again, another sacrificial lamb for the plot, if you want to look at it as like some kind of story narrative. These two guys fit a role against each other, and people, I guess, were just happy to see it. But yeah, it was probably the worst performance I've seen from both of these fighters. The only thing that can go for Tony Ferguson was his performance against Beneil Dariush. That was really bad as well. For Nate, this is the worst I've seen him look. But how can it not be? These two are lightweights, really. Almost 40 years old. You don't see many lightweights or even welterweights fight at nearly 40 years old, especially with how long these two guys have been fighting, how much damage they've taken in their careers. In reality, they're like 50 years old, not 40. So for sure, they were not going to look that good. I was even anticipating that going into the fight. I knew that these two are not going to look that good, especially Tony coming off a knockout loss. And then as for Paulo Costa, he did a good job, man. I'm not going to lie, because he was laughed at by everybody, and now he is a troll. He's actually showing his personality, which is refreshing, to be honest. I mean, he even commented on one of my videos. And even though I did criticize his performance against Luke Rockhold, he probably should have looked a lot more dominant in the fight. And he made some questionable decisions in there and all that stuff. My criticism was merely just that it showed that he isn't one of the top guys. He's not an Adesanya or a Whittaker. Not to insult him or anything like that, but it looked like he took it pretty well. So not only is he trolling, not only is he very funny, but he's also mature under all of that. And I like to see that personality come out there, because for a long time, maybe because of the language barrier, it looked like Costa couldn't really be himself. And people thought like he was some kind of jock or something. But yeah, great for Paulo Costa to make that 180. Now people are loving him again. For a different reason, but it's a good reason. And then with the Hobo Bobo, can we talk about how disrespected Robert Whittaker is? I have a few questions regarding him. Number one, where do you rank him in the most skilled fighters of all time? I personally believe he is one of the most well-rounded fighters alive. Number two, where do you rank him in the middleweight GOAT conversation? And number three, if he was resized into every weight class, how many would he be a champion in? Love the content. Very interesting questions. Now, where do I rank him in terms of the most skilled fighters of all time? That's a hard question to answer. There's so many good guys up there, but I probably rank him at least in the top 15. So you're going to have like what? Jose Aldo, GSP, Demetrius Johnson, Khabib, Petr Yan potentially, like Alexander Volkanovski. There's a bunch of guys that in the lower weight classes are going to be above him for sure. Because again, at the end of the day, Whittaker is a middleweight. A lot of the middleweights are not as skilled as the lighter weight class fighters. But I don't think I can rank him below top 15. At least top 15, could be even top 10. Of all time. And that is a rough estimate. I have to really look at the list, look at all the thousands of fighters that have ever competed, or at least the hundreds that I can consider on this top tier list to really know where Whittaker would be at. But the second question isn't as complicated. Where do you rank him in the middleweight GOAT conversation? Now, the way I look at GOAT lists and all that is like who you beat, which is the most important, the resume, so like the title accolades, what you did as a champion, how long you've done it, the skills involved, performances, all of it together after who you beat. because who you beat is the most important thing you can ever look at. It makes up everything else that could be considered. Your title reign looks better when you have a good list of guys you beat. The longevity you have looks better with the type of guys that you beat. Your performances look better with the type of guys that you beat. And Whittaker beat some amazing fighters throughout his career, man. And his performances, even his loss against Adesanya, the last one, is not really that bad against him. Really good in that fight as well. So if I had to look at it right now, I exclude all PED users, so Anderson's out. Israel Adesanya is the greatest middleweight of all time. And after that, it would be a debate between Chris Weidman and Robert Whittaker. So the big thing going for Weidman, of course, are the 2 wins against Anderson Silva. Literally beats, if you count PED users, the greatest middleweight of all time, and nobody is contesting his status right now. So he beat that guy twice. He beat Machida and Belfort. And even Damian Maia is a good win. He did beat Kelvin Gastelum. So those are all good wins. Vitor wasn't on TRT, so it does degrade that win for him. But Vitor was still a formidable force. Now for Robert Whittaker, he beat Yoel Romero twice, while also injured in both of those fights. He beat Jacare Souza, Derek Brunson, Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, and Marvin Vettori. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Robert Whittaker. Whittaker is the second greatest middleweight of all time. The only thing that goes for Weidman over Whittaker is that he had a longer title reign. He had 3 title defenses after winning the belt against Anderson. But if you really also think about it, he fought 4 southpaw counter-strikers in a row with poor wrestling. His whole title reign were against southpaw fighters. Anderson twice, Lyoto, Vitor. Whittaker, on the other hand, had to go up against a plethora of different kind of styles. Vettori is very different than Gastelum, very different from Cannonier, very different from Till, from Romero, from Jacare, from Brunson, even from Adesanya the last time. So even though Weidman's list, we look at Anderson specifically, it looked like a tougher list for him to beat. But when you talk about skills and styles, Whittaker's actually must have been even harder because he had to prepare for completely different kind of styles for almost every single one of his fights outside from the 2 Romero fights. And in fact, Romero fought differently in the second than he did in the first. He fought mostly orthodox in the second fight. Completely switched it up on Whittaker. Whereas for Weidman, Anderson, Lyoto, and Vitor have some fundamental similarities with each other. And that was Weidman's entire title reign. Now, the thing that definitely goes against Weidman is he's lost so many times. And not only lost, the man's been knocked out many times. So 100% Robert Whittaker is the second greatest middleweight of all time. And then your third question, if he was resized into every single weight class, how many would he be a champion in? I touched on this before. So a heavyweight, I don't think he would be the champ, but he could become one eventually. But I think he gets knocked out. He's too chinny. At light heavyweight with Yuri Prohaska on top, that's like a dangerous fight for him stylistically. But he is more skilled overall. I can see him becoming a champ, but it's up in the air with light heavyweight. At middleweight, I can see him becoming a champ. He should be the champion right now. At welterweight, he's 100% becoming a champ. It could be against Leon, it could be against Kamaru, it could be against Khamzat, it could be against Colby, Burns, any of those guys. Whittaker would be the boogeyman of the welterweight division. Lightweight's a different story. This is a tough division. So specifically, how would he beat Charles Oliveira? Definitely not going to take him to the ground, but he is a much more capable striker. Size him down, though, can he take Oliveira's shots? Oliveira's powerful and very precise. But at the same time, he doesn't move his head. And if you're an easy target for Whittaker, you're going to get hit all day. Especially when you're just marching forward and don't really have any kind of lateral movement. Whittaker is a blitzing fighter from an outside distance, so he can find all different kind of angles to blitz at you from a distance. So I do think that Whittaker will also be the champ in the lightweight division. At featherweight, I don't see how he beats Volkanovski, size parity-wise. In fact, a lot of those guys at featherweight are going to be very tough for him. Bantamweight, he becomes a champ 100%. And flyweight, I think he might be too chinny to take Davis and Figueiredo's shots. And even Moreno would be a tough fight for him. So how many divisions is he a champion then? 4 divisions. And then we go to the Nana-Knights. Anderson's and Nate's chances against Jake Paul. If I were to put into percentages, I would say Anderson's like a 55% chance of winning. Maybe closer to 60 perhaps, so like 57%. And Nate's chances, I'd say, are like a 60 to 62% chance, considering that he is much younger than Anderson. And then what's next for Tony and Conor? If he's going to fight again, I would like to see them two up against each other, even if Tony gets knocked out or something. I mean, if he wants to fight, he's probably going to get hurt regardless of who he goes up against. And I can also see Conor fighting the winner of Dustin and Chandler, depending on if they would get an immediate title shot or not. Then early breakdown prediction of Charles versus Islam. From my friends and family members, I've been asked this question nearly every single time I see them. Even people that don't even watch the sport that much, they know like Conor, they know Khabib, they've heard of John Jones and Anderson Silva. They are infatuated with this fight. Oliveira and Islam might be a bigger fight than we actually realize. Like pay-per-view wise, the numbers, all of that. I think there's so many eyes on this fight. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people of how big it actually is. It's the Tony versus Khabib that we never got. But I won't say it's the wish version at all. In fact, this might even be the better version of those two. So here's what I gotta say. Islam is definitely the one that's gonna be favored to win this one. Considering the fact that if it gets to the ground, stemming from the Kevin Lee fight with Charles Oliveira, Islam could definitely control him. He could play it smooth, he could play it slow, stop all the transitions. Charles is constantly going to be looking for submissions in a way to sweep, just like he did against Kevin Lee. But Kevin Lee was able to stay on top and even get in really good positions on top of Charles. He just played it slow. He didn't go for anything too crazy. He didn't open himself up for Charles to catch onto something. That's something that Islam will do as well. Islam is different than Khabib. Khabib will try to smash you, he'll create openings for you, but at the same time with him creating openings, punches are raining down on you and he's stacking and tripoding and trying to get around. All at the same time, he smashes you to a point where you give up positions to him and he takes them. The punishment is so devastating. And before you know it, your back is up against the fence, he has a Dagestani handcuff and he's wailing you in the face and you can't do anything about it. With Islam, it's a bit different. Even though he does have ground and pound shots, even though he's heavily pressuring you on top, he's much slower and I would say, for lack of a better word, technical than Khabib. Everything's very compact, everything's very tight, everything is purposeful instead of just trying to hurt you. He will actually grapple you like a grappler more than Khabib will. There's a lot of time spent on the ground with Islam with him not punching you in the face. With Khabib, it's not like that. Khabib will punch you in the face the majority of the time he's on top of you. Where Islam will grapple. He'll grab onto you. He'll contort you. He'll try to transition without even landing any punches on you. And that ultimately will give less space for Oliveira to try to scramble out of there or try to reverse him or sweep him or submit him. So there's a potential chance that Islam can ride out rounds, slowly transitioning on Charles Oliveira and winning because of that. Now that is merely on the ground. At any given chance, Oliveira could always catch onto something. He's potentially the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the UFC. So if anybody can catch Islam in the middle of something, it would be Oliveira. But here's when things get tough for Islam Makhachev. Getting to the ground. Islam's type of takedown is going to be very crucial in this one. If he shoots from a distance, if he shoots a double or a single, he could get submitted right away. Look what happened with Kevin Lee. As soon as Kevin Lee shot on Oliveira, the fight was over. And Oliveira didn't have the full control of his body. It was just merely the choke, and Kevin Lee was done. That fight ended in a split of a second because of the type of takedown that Kevin Lee shot on him. Remember when Khabib shot on Dustin Poirier, who is very similar to Islam's type of wrestling on the feet, he got put into a deep guillotine as well. The guillotine against the double or single leg from Islam is actually one of the most important things to look at for this fight. That high elbow guillotine is absolutely no joke from Charles Oliveira. And if Islam shoots wrong at any given moment, the fight could end right there. And there could be many different reasons for Islam to shoot that kind of takedown when he probably shouldn't be. Is it a panic shot? Is it out of desperation? Is Charles putting too much pressure on him, punching him in the face, and Islam has to do something? He has to shoot a takedown. Gets caught in a guillotine. That can absolutely happen. Or Islam just makes a mistake by pressuring Oliveira back, and he just shoots that takedown when he shouldn't be. Islam should be going more for trips against the cage. Judo tosses, all of that stuff. Because those kind of takedowns are much harder for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist to catch a submission mid-takedown. In the middle of the takedown, it's going to be a lot harder for Oliveira to catch a submission on Islam from those clinching positions with the trips and the throws. There is a potential like Kimura. There's a lot of different things that Oliveira can do from there, but it is less threatening for Islam. Now, how could it get to that? How could Islam get into a clinch position with Oliveira and trip him out against the fence? That's all going to come down to the pressure. The pressure factor between Oliveira and Islam is the most important thing in the whole fight. There is nothing that's going to dictate how the fight is going to go more than who is going to pressure who back and who's going to be more successful on distance management. Because if Islam pushes Oliveira back, he's going to get him up against the fence. It's just a matter of time. And Oliveira's punches are not going to be as threatening on the back foot as they are on the front foot. But he has knocked out opponents before on the back foot. Remember when he dropped Jared Gordon moving backwards with a counter right hand? He is definitely powerful on the back foot, 100%. But Islam is so defensively minded in his striking. He doesn't like to do anything too crazy sometimes. He is more defensive than he is offensive. It's going to be one of the harder guys for Oliveira to catch, in my opinion. So I'm pretty sure, unless he gets sniped, Islam is probably going to push Oliveira up against the fence if he's the one pressuring the fight. So that's one way that clinch exchange can happen. The other way is Oliveira's pressuring Islam, but he gets too close. Let's say he's pumping the jab. Let's say he's kicking him to the body. Let's say he's trying to line up the right straight, feinting uppercuts, but then at some point he throws that left hook. He always throws. He always throws it when he backs you up. He throws that left hook and Islam ducks under it or something. Charles gets too close because he overextended or put too much of his body behind it, and now he's close with Islam. Islam grabs onto him, turns him into the cage. Now that clinch exchange is happening again, and Islam can trip him out. That is why Oliveira is going to have to be extremely keen on keeping range on Islam if he's pressuring him. He cannot be overly aggressive. He cannot be looking for the big knockout. He needs to pick at him. In fact, As ironic as he is, as many times he's been calling Conor out, Conor's approach to distance striking is something that Oliveira should probably take in this one. Keep that long range on Islam, use pretty good back and forth movement, but very slightly. Always anticipate the desperate shot to get out of that pressure from Islam. Pump jabs in him, throw out right straights if you see the opening, maybe some teeps here and there, but be very reluctant on throwing too many kicks. Got to really mask those, and a lot of feints to open up the big shot. That is Oliveira's chance of winning here, because Islam, again, is going to be very defensive. Sometimes he'll wing out big left overhands into takedowns, and Islam is a lot faster than people think. Islam is so fast to explode with anything he does. That is very similar to Khabib as well. They're not super technical strikers, they're not clean, but they're very explosive. That is why I said I wouldn't be surprised if even Islam hurts Charles with a big shot. If Charles is standing too straight and he's not moving, and Islam just explodes with the left overhand, that could hurt him 100%. So at the end of the day, I do see more of a chance that Islam wins this, so I would have to side with him, but it is a super dangerous fight for him. Oliveira's going to have to be perfect with his distance management and his pressure in this fight. Man, I'm so excited about that fight, man. And then we took Daniel Adkins. Number one, if all champs were to leave, disappear, how would each division go and who would take over as a champ? Heavyweight, Ciryl Gane. Light heavyweight's Magomedov Ankalaev. Middleweight is Robert Whittaker. Welterweight is Colby Covington. Lightweight would have been Dustin for this time, but then I think Islam would have beaten him. Featherweight is Max Holloway. Bantamweight is Piotr Jan. Flyweight is Brendan Moreno. Women's bantamweight is Irene Aldana, maybe? Women's flyweight is Tyler Santos. And strawweight is Rose Namajunas. Number two, how do you see the Edwards and Usman 3 fight going, and what does it mean for Chimaev? There's two ways this fight goes. Number one, Usman continues his domination of the last fight and just doesn't make that simple mistake, and Edwards never finds that big shot again. Or number two, Usman is not the same after that knockout. He becomes chinny, he becomes gun-shy, and Edwards just picks him apart for the whole fight. I don't see any other way that fight really goes down. And what does it mean for Chimaev? I don't think it changes anything. If Edwards wins or Usman wins, regardless of how they do it, they're not going to fight each other again. And for Chimaev, I mean, he still needs to beat like Colby or something, right? I think that's what everybody's saying. So regardless of who wins that fight, he should be fighting Colby Covington, and the winner of that gets a title shot regardless. And then number three, if Oliveira gets past Makhachev, is there any legit threats left in the lightweight division for him? It's only just begun, man. He's got a lot of threats. In fact, I have to say he has the most threats out of any other fighter right now, even if he beats Makhachev. Look at who he has to go up against. Fiziev is going to be a monster for him. Gamrot is not going to be easy. Arman Tsarukyan potentially. Damir Ismagulov. Even Michael Chandler again. Jalen Turner could be a tough one as well. Charles Oliveira is in danger regardless. There's like almost no easy fights for him in the whole division. Man, I feel bad for the guy. And then we go to Off the Senzu. Hey Weasel, I'm somewhat of a new fan of the UFC, as my first card was UFC 256 with Figgy versus Moreno 1, and I've been hooked to the sport ever since Holland's insane performance against Jacare. Yeah, that was a crazy one, man, and welcome. As someone of a newcomer, what are some fan favorite fights I should go back and watch? I'm mainly targeting Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, and other fighters that weren't in their prime ever since UFC 256. Now, it's going to depend what you like. Do you like the crazy performances? Do you like the crazy knockouts? Do you like the technical chess match of a fight? So if you want to look at great performances, look at Anderson Silva's title reign. You're probably never going to find someone who performed at that kind of level ever again, in terms of finishing his opponent in a lethal style. Jose Aldo, very technical. So if you want to look at someone who's very well-rounded, especially back in the day, which was extremely rare to find, fighting elite competition over and over again, but for most of it, not too exciting. Aldo's title reign is definitely one to look at. The best fight to look at for Jose Aldo was his fight against Chad Mendes, but there is one thing against that. It was his toughest fight before he lost. So it's going to make you think, oh, maybe Aldo really wasn't that good. So what I will say is, if you want to look at Jose Aldo's career, just look at the whole thing, whole UFC title reign from start to finish. If you want to start in WEC, you can do that as well. He fought a bit differently back then. He was more willing to go for a finish back then. Especially watch the Ricardo Lamas fight, which was one of his most technical performances. Watch the Kenny Florian fight to see how he does against range fighters with good grappling. His fight with Korean Zombie shows his wrestling and his way to stay patient in a fight while winning small back and forth exchanges with a powerful striker. Watch his first Chad Mendes fight to see how he can find an opening on you. If you're not technically on his level, he can catch you at any point. Watch his Frankie Edgar fight to see the best guy he's ever beat, and at the time, one of the most successful wrestlers in the sport, and him getting almost completely thwarted by Jose Aldo's defensive wrestling skills. And then you want to watch the second Chad Mendes fight, so you grasp how great Jose Aldo actually is, and that makes you appreciate Chad Mendes' skills even more. It's one of the greatest fights of all time, and I will say the greatest overlooked fight of all time. And after that, it's good to look at his second Frankie Edgar fight, which is the best he's ever shown for his takedown defense. He's never looked better against a wrestler than his second fight with Frankie. Now, if you want some crazy stuff, If you want rock'em sock'em, still highly technical, high-level barn-burning back and forths, look at Robbie Lawler. When Robbie Lawler was in his prime, there was nothing like him. He hit a skill level he's never hit before, changed gyms to American Top Team, and my man was so dangerous with his technique now, which he lacked before. He was always powerful and ferocious, but he lacked the kind of skill necessary for him to be the best fighter in his weight class. He came to American Top Team and returned to the UFC. I've never seen anything like that before. Starting with his Josh Koscheck knockout. That was brutal, man. Look at his Johnny Hendricks fights, both of them. And definitely you have to check out the Rory McDonald rematch and the Carlos Condit fights. 2 back-to-back fights that were regarded as some of the greatest of all time. But there's so many fights, man. There's so much recommendations I can give you. I could literally spend a whole hour talking about it. Then we go to Diego Marvid. What would every UFC champion need in order to be considered the GOAT of their divisions? For Francis, another title defense or 2. That's it. For Yuri Prohaska, so much. I mean, if you take out John Jones, maybe not as hard, because John Jones was so ahead of every single light heavyweight in history. So for him to catch up to like Chuck Liddell, it's really going to come down to the title defenses. The competition is going to come with it, and he puts on good performances. So if he just performs at that level, because Chuck Liddell always performed, he always puts on amazing finishes and stuff. Yuri just has to fight often. That's really it, and not lose. Easier said than done. For Israel Adesanya, he is the greatest. But for him to be greater than Anderson, he's going to have to start putting people out, man. He's going to have to start putting on performances, because that's what made Anderson's legacy, as well as him having 10 title defenses. But the thing is, Anderson didn't need 10 title defenses for people to consider him the greatest fighter on the planet. It was the way he was performing, while also being the champion. So Adesanya is going to have to do something like that. But if you're not going to count Anderson, Adesanya is the greatest. Leon Edwards. I don't think he'll ever hit it, no matter what he has to do. GSP set that bar so high, it's almost unreachable. Even Usman wasn't really that close, because GSP didn't finish anybody or have these magnificent performances, and his whole thing was about numbers and domination. That's all that Leon's gonna have to come up to, or he just knocks out everybody and gets like half the title defenses at GSP, and let's say, he beats the top guys, because he's gonna beat the top guys in the meantime. So he's gonna have to get like 9 title defenses just winning, then he can get up to GSP, or he gets like 5 to 6 title defenses and knocks all of them out. Then people will probably consider him the greatest welterweight of all time. Charles Oliveira. If he beats Islam, people might consider him the greatest lightweight of all time. I would say one more title defense, finish that guy, and he's the greatest of all time, 100%. Khabib has that domination factor, but Oliveira's putting these guys away very fast. So does it equal itself out when it comes to that? So does it all come down to title defenses and win streaks and stuff? With a win over Islam, you could say that Oliveira has a stronger list of competition beat than even Khabib. Now for Alexander Volkanovski, he's so far away. Just keeps doing what he's doing. Dominates, gets to all those numbers. That's really it. And he's not even halfway there, because Aldo put on tremendous performances as well. And he beat amazing fighters as well. But considering that Volkanovski beat Aldo, he beat Holloway 3 times, he beat Ortega, Korean Zombie, Chad Mendes, his list of competition is really strong already. So maybe he doesn't have to get to all those numbers. He doesn't have to get 9 title defenses. So maybe if he gets to like 6 or 7, he could be considered the greatest featherweight of all time. I think he has, 4 right now? So actually, now I think about it, he's not that far away. Aljamain Sterling, if he just performs the way he's performing and he gets like another 2 title defenses, he could be considered the greatest bantamweight of all time. If he beats TJ and he beats the winner of Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley, potentially, he beats Chito Vera, then he would 100% be the greatest bantamweight of all time. For Davis Figueiredo, he is so far away, that is probably unattainable for him. Because Demetrius Johnson not only had 11 title defenses, he also finished most of them. He also performed so well in all of those. So Figueroa has to perform against these guys, finish them, as well as getting like 10 to 11 to 12 title defenses, which is insane. Amanda is the greatest. Valentina is the greatest. Carla Esparza, gotta put the numbers. That's it. She's not gonna perform the way Joanna really did. So probably even more title defenses than Joanna had. And then we go to Mike Hansen. When will the sport be so evolved that everyone has an MMA background as opposed to a striking or wrestling background? That is already starting. In fact, it started with Rory McDonald. He was one of the first guys that didn't have a strict background in something. He started as an MMA fighter. So I would say the time that everybody is that way, maybe like 10 to 15 years. And then number 2, if you had to guess, what will Colby's next fight be? Khamzat. Number 3, how do you see Nate versus Jake Paul going? I see Jake trying to land the big shot, trying to land the big right hand. Nate deflecting the punches often, pulling away, countering with his check right hook. Remember, they both are opposite stance fighters, which is something that Jake is new to. And Nate's fought many orthodox fighters in his entire career, better boxers than Jake Paul. And I think Nate's famous left straight is going to catch him. over and over again to the point of exhaustion, and Jake is not able to take the punch anymore. Nate finishes Jake in the later rounds. And even if Jake hits Nate, it's going to be very hard to hurt him, especially with boxing gloves. The guy's a zombie. Even though Jake hits very, very hard, it might even be the biggest puncher Nate's ever fought, unless they fight in like 5 years, where Nate is just too old. Jake might have a hard time putting him away. And the more he tries, the more he's going to get tired, because it's hard to hit Nate clean. He's always pulling. He's always moving his head with punches, rolling. Number 4, how would Khabib do at welterweight if he decided to come back? Well, for sure he destroys Leon. He takes Leon down and Leon gives up his back. The fight's over. There's almost nothing Leon can do on the ground with Khabib. I think Usman beats Khabib. I think Khabib beats Colby, purely because of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu difference and the Judo difference, and also the fact that Khabib, I think, is bigger than Colby, which is crazy. So the size is also going to play to his benefit. I think Khamzat beats Khabib. He's too big. He's too powerful with his hands. Khabib will have a hard time taking him down. Burns is an interesting fight. That, I would actually have to say, is the most back and forth fight for Khabib in the whole weight class. Because does he want to take Gilbert Burns down? He definitely doesn't want to strike with him. Khamzat at least had attributes like reach and power on his side, and even has better offensive fundamental boxing skill than Khabib. Khabib is wild on the feet and can get caught, but every time he throws like a big punch, he shoots in for a takedown. So will he do that to Gilbert? I would say the fight is almost a pick'em. He destroys Bilal Muhammad, he destroys Jeff Neal, he destroys Stephen Thompson, Sean Brady, Jorge, Vicente. I think Shavkat's too big. He destroys Michael Chiesa, Neil Magny, Rodriguez, and Pereira. Number 5, should fighters who are way older than their opponents be allowed to have a certain level of PEDs in their system so that it is a fairer fight? Triple G versus Canelo comes to mind. I can see the argument because age hits everybody and it does level the fight out, but at the same time, it's not fair that someone can take something, because do we fully, completely, 100% understand how the system changes the PEDs and what types of PEDs, all the different kinds of them? If they can do that, if they know 100% what these certain PEDs does to the system, and it makes it fair, like even between fighters, where all the levels are equal, then I think they can be allowed. But from what I see, there's so much uncertainty with all of this. Triple G versus Canelo does come to mind, but Triple G did look like he was on something. I'm not gonna lie. Did you see his body? They would add T3000. Imagine Michael Chandler working his way through up the whole weight class when he entered the UFC, instead of getting an immediate top 5 contender fight. Considering how stacked the lightweight division is, do you think he would have made his way to the top of the division? Are there any lower ranked or unranked fighters that would have given him problems? Oh yeah, Islam Makhachev was ranked number 13 when Michael Chandler came into the scene. I think Drew Dober is stylistically a tough fight for him. But Neil Dariush would have been an interesting one with him because he was ranked number 12 at the time. You did have like Guram Kutladze unranked. You did have Metush Gamrot unranked. You did have Arman Tsarukyan unranked. Atman Zaitar would have been an interesting one as well. Yeah, there would have been some tough competition for Michael Chandler for sure. But imagine him have to fight Islam Makhachev, like work his way up, and he fights Islam when Chandler breaks the top 15. I mean, actually, his style is actually decent against Islam. But it's more like the strikers like a Kutladze. Even Gamrot would have given him a lot of problems. And then went to Rabbit Man. If you could make prime versus prime matchups throughout history of the UFC, which fights would you have wanted to see? Just the UFC, the one that really stands out for me is Jose Aldo versus Alexander Volkanovski. I've been thinking about this a lot more recently because when they fought each other, neither of them were in their prime. Aldo was on the decline as a featherweight before he changed boxing gyms, I guess, and Volkanovski was reaching his prime. And the fight really wasn't that good because of that. It looked like Volk wanted to just do enough, not get into too much danger in the fight, considering what him and Chad Mendes looked like. I mean, he got hurt in that one. So imagine when Aldo beat like Korean Zombie, or when he beat Ricardo Lamas, or Chad Mendes the second time. Imagine that version of Jose Aldo versus the Volkanovski that just beat Max Holloway the third time. I don't think you'll see a more technical, high-level fight than that one in history. My number one fight of all MMA, though, would have been Fedor versus DC in their primes. That would be the top of my list. Anderson versus Israel Adesanya in their primes. That would have been an interesting one. It would have been super fun, but it would be stylish. Usman versus GSP would have been great. Khamzat versus Robbie Lawler. That would be a great one to see as well. And then with the Muhammad Fad. What is one skill attribute you think each champion is lacking in the most? Francis Ngannou, more emphasis on technique, even though he's going that route. I think it's the only thing he lacks in. Because if he stays more technical, he also doesn't have to expend as much on his gas tank. So it's going to help in all different kind of areas. Instead of just focusing on his power. But again, he is doing this right now. He is working on it. That's all that's necessary for Francis. For Yuri Prohaska, more defense on everything. More defensive wrestling, more defensive striking. Don't leave his head open so much. Pick up the hands more, parry punches, slip them. His way of defending punches and takedowns is so, like, unnecessary sometimes. He'll dip his head on jabs so far when that is not necessary. Or he'll Granby roll out of all the takedowns. Boy, he's way too tall for the cage. Because look what happened with him and Glover. When Glover shot in and Yuri wanted to roll out of it, he rolled from one side of the cage to the other. And then Glover just drove him into the fence. Basic fundamental defense for Yuri. For Adesanya, pull the trigger more, as well as take down defense in the center. For Leon Edwards, no more giving up the back when people take you to the ground. This has been a very common thing. He's been doing this throughout his entire career to get up. But everywhere else, he's super technical. So he's one of the most well-rounded champions in the UFC right now. Charles Oliveira moved the head more. Alexander Volkanovski, I don't know. He's fixed so many of his problems in such a short amount of time. Like, for example, between the Holloway fights, he was extending so much with his right hand in the second. And in the third, he wasn't doing it as much anymore. So whatever his mistakes are now, he's going to fix it in his next fight. That was the biggest weakness of him. He would overextend with his power shots, and now he's not even doing that anymore. It was shown in the Korean Zombie fight. Look how polished his boxing was. He was a completely different boxer in the Korean Zombie fight than he was in the second Holloway fight, or even the Brian Ortega fight. So really, there isn't much for Volkanovski, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to have to really take a deep dive and really pick out some of the stuff he's lacking. Now for Aljamain Sterling, more polished takedowns, I would say, offensively that is. His takedowns can be somewhat sloppy at times. It can be somewhat chaotic to the point where he scrambles his way to the ground from a takedown, which is something that wrestlers don't want to do too much in MMA because of the fear of getting caught in the middle of it. But he does have really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so he doesn't have to worry too much about that. But there is a risk of him getting shut down, just like in the first Patreon fight. There are other really good wrestlers in the division that some of the stuff is not going to work against, such as his next fight with TJ Dillashaw. Other stuff, his boxing in general, is not as polished as probably it should be, especially in comparison to the other strikers of the division. He does have really good reach in his punches. He has really good output, but everything is so loose and open. His guard is open. When he throws punches, his arms are wide open. And there's a lot of opportunities for opponents to counter him, but they just have a fear of the takedown. Deiveson Figueiredo, more emphasis on distance management. He has this reach on everybody, but when he throws his punches, he just clashes his body into theirs into close range. Also, the body locks need to be defended. Wow, do those need to be defended. They're so easy to get on him. But other than that, the guy is highly technical, very well-rounded. And then we're to Mr. Libert Kraus. If you could base fight choreography for an old-school Kung Fu style movie off of 2 or 3 modern MMA fighters, who would they be? Well, since it's Kung Fu, I guess Wonderboy would be one of them for that flashiness and the kicks and all that. And then you have Muslim Salikov with more of impact in everything he does with the stylish techniques. And then Mindstorm. Do you think they'll keep Khamzat away from Shavkat as long as possible until Shavkat becomes a bigger name? Even though Shavkat is ranked right now, he's hardly spoken of in the media, whereas Khamzat was being propelled by the media in the UFC before even being ranked. I just wonder if the UFC will prolong this matchup, even if Shavkat goes higher in the rankings. Keep up the great content, man. Yeah, it'd be smart, to be honest, not because they're scared like Khamzat's gonna lose, but it's potentially a big fight that can happen in the future between two guys that seemingly are the future of the weight class, and even potentially future of the middleweight division, both of them. And no matter how it goes down, it's going to be a tough one between them. So they're probably going to want to maximize Khamzat's popularity and maybe build Shavkat's off of that with matching them two. Maybe by the time that Shavkat starts really getting those big wins, they're going to promote him a lot. You know, it's pretty funny. It reminds me of like Canelo versus Triple G in a way. Triple G was getting a lot of his promotion because of the way he was beating guys, not necessarily because of the force propelling of promotion on a certain fighter like Canelo. Canelo got a lot of media talking about him for a long time, but people started talking about Triple G because they saw what he was doing. And they knew that a fight between them two would be special. I think it's a very similar thing that can happen with Khamzat and Shavkat. Khamzat is the Canelo, Shavkat is the Triple G. And that is ultimately the end of the podcast, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Really good questions, really interesting ones. And I'll see you in the next video.